Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another video about Minecraft. Oh my goodness, oh my damn, I cannot believe it. It's probably been like 84 years or something. But we are back, and the thing is, we are back with something even better than just Minecraft. We have returned to the Dark Mall, because as you guys can see, I have been working a little bit, just a tiny bit. But the fourth and pretty much final block of the Dark Mall is finally finished. He started all the way back over here in the green district, green wing, and you got the red ring over here, the red block with all sorts of little stores, and before that we even had the blue block over here with again all sorts of crazy different stores. But today we won't be looking at any of those. The parts will be in the description if you want to check all of these shops out in detail. Today we'll be focusing on the fourth, but not quite the final part. I will get to that later. But let's just begin straight away, because there's a lot to show, a lot to talk about, a lot to show. Let's start off with the first shop I made, and that is Cabin 07. You might be wondering, what in the world is this? It's I got inspired for my trip in Canada. I came across a little store called Cabin 108. Now, unfortunately, 108 is that sign is uneven, and I didn't like that. So I decided, you know what? I'll just rob it and make my own version of it, and that's Cabin 107. And it's supposed to be like women fashion, you know, women boutique or something. So I probably shouldn't be in here. Oh well. But for educational purposes and video purposes, it's a cool little store inspired by something I thought was quite cool. I like the cabin. That cabin was in quite a cabin core mood, if you know what I mean. Next to that is Björn Borg, which is a mainly sport focused store, I believe. So you got a lot of sports stuff, and it's a cool little store. I like the arches and the fancy lamps over here. And yeah, this one's pretty cool. I believe it's based on one. I have no clue which one though. I feel like it was somewhere in Denmark, but I made this so long ago I can already not remember anything. But it's cool, and it even has leaves. It's the first store I believe which actually used leaves. It isn't, but oh well. It's a cool store nevertheless. Here we have Canada Goose, you know, to keep in the Canada theme, the Nordic theme. And you know, it's a pretty expensive little brand, Canada Goose. I just like it because it has goose in the name. Nothing more, nothing less, and it's a pretty simple store. But yeah, it's not too bad. You know, put some respect on its name. It's pretty good. Next to that sits another high-class store, the Louvre, and this is pretty much the most wacky store in the entire mall, I feel like, because you know, we have glass tables, a thick bench, and you know, shoes, and you know, it's a pretty high class store. I think you guys get the point. Fancy, wacky looking carpets. It looks like some sort of disco floor, but it's just a fancy carpet, pretty expensive carpet at that, and some abstract fine art, which is, you know, always around in these expensive stores. I don't get that. Maybe I'm just low class or whatever, low culture. But you know, the store, the exteriors of these stores are absolutely insane, man. I love these exteriors, man. The designs, you know, which architect worked on that deserves a pretty big pat on the back and a medal, because those stores are really cool. Shall we save the restaurants for later? Oh well, we are here. This is one out of the 4 restaurants in this block. The first one over here, which we'll be showing, is the Dark Mall Diner, which is a retro diner inspired by, you know, this classic American retro diners. I'm sure you all know what I mean. And yeah, I really like this. I mean, this is really like, I don't know why, but I just really like this, and I feel like a lot of people also just like this. But you know, we can't really put our fingers on what actually makes us like this so much, but it's just such a cool little place to eat and hang out, man. It's just nice, I suppose. But yeah, there's a disco ball over here, and there's like a little bar over here with like this tiny kitchen and plenty of seating. You can sit in the window. There's like a little disc pool over here for, you know, the jukebox, and just these fancy little tables, I suppose. But yeah, this is one of the 4 restaurants you can eat, and you know, you can have a good meal over here. Trust me, it's good stuff. We'll do the other side of it. Well, let's just do the other restaurant, I suppose. Let's go to Coffee and Cake. Now, this is a wacky little restaurant, Coffee and Cake. It's kind of like a saying over here in my family. Coffee and cake. It's weird, but I won't explain. I will just show you guys this instead. The little cozy little cafe. That's the main sort of vibe I went with this, like a little cafe. So here's like the small little cafe bar thingy. Ooh, the fridge door even opens. We got a lot of cake, of course, and a coffee sort of machine. A very cheap coffee machine, but oh well. And yeah, just a bunch of seating. You know, you want to have plenty of guests. So plenty of guests can come here and sit around. We even got a little mini bar over here, which I think is pretty fancy. And a little art on the wall, some flowers here and there. And yeah, it's just a nice little cafe. It even got a little carpet. So that's just coffee and cake, I suppose. Next to this, it's Aspect, which is another high-class store. As you guys can see, way too elite for my end, but it's really cool. I like this lamp design. This store is very white, and I know that, but that's just that. You can ignore that. But I like this lamp design. I think it's interesting. You know, I'm no man for abstract art, but a fancy lamp is pretty fancy at the end of the day. But yeah, this store mainly sells some thick boots and shoes, but we also got a couple t-shirts over there. But yeah, that's the Aspect. It's a pretty modern store, but a pretty fancy one at that. Next to that sits the Lululemon. Lululemon. It's a funny little name. And this one is actually inspired by one from Salt Lake City in Utah, which I actually been to. Yeah, crazy to think about it, but yeah. The exterior, at least, the interior, it was kind of hard. It kind of didn't work, so I just sticked with the exterior. But the exterior is pretty cool, I suppose. Yeah, a lot of clothes, a lot of booths. Fancy little candles, and yeah, you can get all your sport equipment, high quality, high class sport equipment over here. I believe it sells sport equipment, mainly sport equipment, probably also some expensive fashion or something, but oh well. Rolex is over here. Rolex, if you want some fancy watches or a clock, I suppose, or a compass. But yeah, I think this store speaks for itself. Many of you probably heard of this store. You know, sell some expensive watches, and you know, these stores are kind of wacky because usually they contain more seating than actual like things you can buy. It's kind of wacky. It feels more or less like a cafe with all the seating and stuff. But oh well. Yeah, you could just sit here, I suppose, and do nothing. Look at some watches. Watch some watches. Okay. But yeah, that's the Rolex store. Pretty something, I suppose. Next to that sits another high expensive brand. You might get the feeling that we have some expensive brands over here. This is Stone Island over here, and I actually been to this one as well. It's in Amsterdam apparently, and it's a pretty simple and slick store, I suppose. You got some fancy clothes, some fancy shoes, and yeah, it's something, I suppose. I mean, the logo, the star is pretty cool, I suppose. For the rest, it's something, I suppose. The outside, though, I think the outside is really cool with the red glass and stuff. I think this design also is pretty nice. And with that's the first level. We can ascend to the next one, and we'll go with American Eagle, which is another. This is a little middle class brand, I suppose. They do have some cool stuff, but it's also basic in my opinion, also businessy and stuff. All the standard like blue stuff. Ugh. But nevertheless, this store is pretty cool though, and it's one of the few blue stores which I have in the mall, and I think that's pretty cool as well. I like the design, so yeah, that's the American Eagle. I just wanted to have something America and something with eagles, so that's why the store is there. Next to that sits End Rings, which is a custom store. Ooh, wow! And this is a sort of jewelry store, and it sells some rings and other fancy stuff, but you know, those kind of exist, so I just put out some random fancy stuff like some shards, some diamonds, and some other fancy ores and items. So yeah, End Rings. I think the design is really cool. I really took inspiration from those End Rings. I believe this was built around the time that they were actually discovered, and you know, you get that full picture of the full End Ring, so that it's on screen right now. I can't describe anything. But yeah, that's where it's based off, and I think it's a pretty unique design at that. You know, I'm usually not a fan of Endstone, but I think it works. Next to that sits the Casablanca, which is another pretty fancy, pretty fancy store. Let's keep it at that. It's sort of a fusion of like two existing stores into one. I really had a lot of fun building this. So this is based off something, a real life store, I believe, in Paris. That's just a random guess. It could be anywhere in the world. Same for this. This is also based off a real life store, but I have no clue where in the world this is. It could be anywhere. It could be in Japan. It could be in Korea for all I know. Or it could be somewhere else. It could be in America. I have no clue. It could even be in Poland or something. Oh well. But yeah, they have a pretty fancy store. And a pretty luxurious one of that as well. And that's supposed to be the logo. In case you couldn't tell, I made that. It could probably use a little upgrade. Oh well. And next to that sits an Intersport, which I think is a fancy store. You know, it's just a run-of-the-mill sports store, but they got some good stuff over here. You know, not even always sport-related items. They got some cozy sweaters as well, man. This store knows its stuff. Let's just keep it at that. If you know, you know. Good store. And it's based off a real-life one, which I've also been to. It's in The Hague. Wow, crazy, right? And next to that sits a McDonald's. Perfect combination, right? You could go for intense sport, intense workout, straight to an awesome reward. McDonald's fast food, yeah. It's a pretty interesting one. In case you couldn't tell, the outside is sort of inspired by the modern McDonald's DMC made, but the inside is pretty retro, which, you know, I guess I was just in a retro mood or something, but, you know, it's pretty fancy. I suppose you can get your order stuff, and it's the only store / restaurant in the entire mall that contains a bathroom, or a washroom, or a toilet, or whatever you want to call it. I mean, if I could get my hat off, I would tip my hat. That's just sensational, isn't it? But oh well. That's the McDonald's. Pretty simple, pretty simplistic. And then we can already cross over to the last side, and we have a Red Lobster over here. Isn't this amazing? Fun fact, I have never ever eaten a red lobster in my life, or just lobster in general. It's not like I've eaten a blue one. But, you know, it's just a fun little restaurant. This is supposed to be like the lobster. It's kind of just turned into an abstract piece of art at this point. But, oh well, it's red. So I suppose you can sort of make out what it is. But yeah, kitchen over here. Buttons, brewing stands, fridge. And over here is just a bunch of seating. Bunch of fancy little tables with some jungle saplings and a lot of paintings and some fancy lights. Fancy floor, fancy carpet. Pretty much everything you want in a Red Lobster. I mean, it's just the name Red Lobster. It's an ongoing gig again in my family. But yeah, lobsters, pretty cool. And next to that sits another store some of you might be familiar with, the GameStop. But the design is heavily inspired by TMC once again. To go back over at the McDonald's. It's really inspired by that, and I just got a couple of games over here, like Dragon Infinite Wealth from the Yakuza series, an absolute banger. I love Yakuza. Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, which I have only played Dragon Ball FighterZ C. I could upgrade, but nah. JoJo's Bizarre Adventures All-Star Battle R. We all just got it because it's JoJo. Valheim, of course, which is pretty good, you know, especially with the boys, not gonna lie. Ruby Remake Lipstick, you know. that's for me and no one else. Hades over here, which is nice. Shrek Card, I don't know what that's doing over there. That should be a museum at this point. Resident Evil 7, of course. One of my Resident Evil 4 is also pretty good. Half-Life Alyx and Metal Gear Solid. And we got some vintage consoles over here. A PS4, PS5 and an Xbox. I mean, you can clearly tell which one is which, right? Some fancy merchandise over here. There's another shelf over here with some merchandise. And there used to be some Nintendo consoles over here, but I may or may not have accidentally deleted them, and I was too tired to get the custom hats in again. So now there's just nothing. That's too bad. Oh, and there's another shelf over here with some more stuff, in case you were curious. But yeah, that's the GameStop. It's pretty cool, but I had to compromise a little bit as we already got a Nintendo store over there. So it just sells some vintage consoles and some wacky games, but still pretty fun, I suppose. Next to this sits the Speedwagon Foundation. I'm already suited and booted for this one. You might be wondering what in the world is a organization, more or less, like this does, you know, make an appearance over here in the mall. But you know, I felt like sometimes, you know, whenever you have like car shops in malls, you know, it's not like you go into the mall and get a car and just drive, you know, into the mall, out the mall with the car, you know. You go over here, you have a little talk, have a little business, you know, and it's more or less like a sort of outpost, sort of stand. And you know, people can come here, people can visit, and they can have a look around, see what the Speedwalker Foundation is all about. And if they want, they can sit, talk, negotiate for some stuff, you know. So it's more or less like, oh, what's that? Close that, please. So it's more like just, you know, a little store of like, not really a store. It's just like a sort of bureau, I suppose, where, you know, you can just have a look and, you know, see what's the Speedwalker Foundation is all about. And I pretty much just wanted it here because it's a JoJo reference, but oh well. Moving on, we have Club Monaco, a fancy store, very fancy, very Monaco. But yeah, it's cool, I suppose. It's Club Monaco. I pretty much, you know, usually I know a little bit about the store, but I know virtually nothing about this store. I don't even think it's like located in Monaco. It could be, it could very well be actually, but I have no clue. For all I know, it's located in Spain, and I don't even like Spain, but oh well. Cool as a Moose is the last store over here, and it's another Canadian little store. Here it is, here's the Moose. He seems to have lost his sunglasses though. Oh well. It's like a little souvenir shop, more or less, a tourist shop in Canada, I believe. Or it could also provide like some genuine clothing, I'm not quite sure. But yeah, it's just a wacky little store, and I came over from Canada and I wanted to have something, so you know, that's why we have a little Cool as a Moose store over here. So here I am recording an outro, a proper outro of that, way after I've edited the video and all that sort of stuff. I figured, you know, a video could use a proper outro, especially one like this. So, you know, all the stores are finished, all the mall, you know, all the stores the mall has to offer are now done. Wow, awesome. What happens now? Where we go next? Well, in the next part, you will actually see a proper roof on this thing. Sensational, I know. I'll also add a few more decorations, you know, and remove these. These are pretty stinky, I'm not gonna lie. So the mall will get suited and booted, and of course I'll find a way to properly end this over here, to probably close it off. I have a couple of ideas. I'm not quite sure what I'm gonna do, but you know, I'll cook something up. Don't worry, guys. So if you wanna see that, you know, you gotta stick around. You know, who knows when part 5 will drop? It might drop tomorrow. It might drop next week, or it might not drop at all. It might drop in like 5 years or something. I don't know. I have no clue at this point. But you know, if you enjoyed this video, feel free to subscribe, like, and share it, and stick around. And hopefully, I'll be seeing you all again in the next one. And I broke them all. Fantastic. You guys didn't see anything.